The cannabis industry is growing at a rapid pace. In 2012, Washington and Colorado were the first states to legalize recreational cannabis use. Today, there are 32 states that have legalized either medical or recreational use. In addition, 3 countries around the world have completely legalized cannabis, most recently Canada. But let's start by taking a look at Colorado.
Cannabis in Colorado is more than just leaves and buds. Colorado has 547 retail cannabis stores, many manufacturers, testing facilities, operators, and transporters. There are more dispensaries than Starbucks, McDonald's, and 7-Elevens combined. A pretty big industry. Now, let's see how cannabis goes from seed to sale in the state of Colorado. Let's start at the beginning. You're going to need some seeds, but you can't just go to your local garden store and purchase seeds to grow. Seeds or cuttings need to be purchased from licensed dispensaries. And you'll need a state-issued ID to enter one to purchase it. These are some pretty major regulations to get through just for the seeds. Great, you've got some seeds now. But you want to ensure that the best possible plant grows with a desired balance of substances and a healthy yield. In order for your plant to grow its best, you'll have to add some goodies to the soil, like fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides. You'll also need to use a special UV lamp. Remember to protect yourself and do your research, because while the law states cultivators must provide protective equipment, it doesn't have deeper regulations on what those are. And there aren't that many regulations on what goodies can get added to the plant, because cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. Great! You have your plant now, and it's time for harvest. How do you do this as safely as possible to not contaminate everything else around, and to protect your hands and body from injury? You're on your own again, because there aren't that many regulations for protection. There are a few big ones about how you have to store your plant for safety reasons. Now that your plant is harvested, you can either sell it again, but then you have to make sure that you yourself are licensed, as are your customers. Or you can consume it, but you can't exactly wash your cannabis before you smoke it, and those goodies you added earlier can leave some residues that will be consumed. To recap, Colorado is more concerned with the possession and retail operations than cultivation, harvest, and consumption, which is only for those over 21. These lack of regulations in the middle of the chain impact everyone involved. What are the concerns for consumers, and what can we do about them?
Cannabis consumers are not protected by the federal government. Under the Controlled Substance Act, cannabis is defined as a Schedule I drug and is illegal to possess, sell, or consume. Because all federal organizations must adhere to this standard, the EPA has neither studied pesticide use on cannabis, nor has it approved a single pesticide for use on cannabis. States that have legalized cannabis have to write their own policies and regulations. In Colorado, for example, the Colorado Department of Agriculture has chosen a list of about 250 pesticides that are permitted to be used on cannabis, a decision mostly based on their low toxicity. While using low toxicity pesticides is a good place to start, their use on cannabis is still concerning due to the nature of consumption. Unlike other food crops, marijuana cannot be rinsed before consumption because the products are dried and cured. This is especially dangerous for 2 reasons. First, when cannabis is inhaled, studies have found that 60 to 70% of pesticides left on the plant can wind up in the smoke and inhaled. Secondly, cannabis products that are ingested are typically a concentrated product. And while concentrated products can lead to higher levels of THC, it can also lead to higher levels of pesticides, up to 10 times as much of that found in smoke. No matter the method, consuming cannabis puts pesticides in your body. While the effect of small doses of pesticides are not well researched, chronic pesticide exposure is linked with respiratory disease, neurodegenerative disease, diabetes, birth defects, reproductive problems, and many forms of cancer. One pesticide to watch out for is myclobutanil. It is not permitted for use on cannabis in either Colorado or Washington, but it has been found on tested samples in both states. This fungicide is fine to ingest, but when burned it produces hydrogen cyanide. Inhaling small amounts of hydrogen cyanide can cause headache, dizziness, weakness, nausea, vomiting. Generally, the more serious the exposure, the more serious the effects. Several audits and screenings have found harmful pesticides on cannabis being sold across the country. So if you're a cannabis consumer, do some extra research and ensure that wherever your cannabis is being cultivated, that banned or potentially harmful pesticides are not being used in their growing operation. Remember, cannabis cannot be washed clean from pesticides, so it's important to know what you're inhaling or consuming. So there you have it. Know where it grows and happy consumption.